Hello and welcome. We're honored to have you with us today for our latest in the webinar series, GIS for State and Local Government. My name is James Kelt. I'm the Vice President with Geographic Technologies Group. I've been in the GIS industry for a little over 25 years, and I'm very excited about today's topic, GIS for Parks and Recreation Management. In my experience working with government entities throughout North America, I've seen, as most of us have, the evolution of GIS, and especially in the last few years, really take hold on how GIS can be used in multiple disciplines. So I'm really excited about today's session on how GIS can be applied to Parks and Recreation. So hopefully you'll get a lot out of today's topics and panelists. Before we get started, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you, our attendees. So we have a quick poll. Just kind of learn a little bit about your organization, where you're located. It gives us an idea of who you are and where you're at. So if you can take the time to fill that out. Today, we have an outstanding group of panelists covering a wealth of topics as relating to geospatial technology and parks and recreation. We'll meet with Dr. Nikolas Smilovsky, who is the Geospatial Solution Director with Bad Elf. We'll also have a presentation by Mr. John Snow, who's a board-certified master arborist and managing partner with Tree CheckUp. We will have a presentation by Justin Azevedo, who's the founder and principal of the Design Laboratory. So looking forward to that presentation. Also with us today, Jonathan Welker, who's a senior enterprise solutions analyst with Geographic Technologies Group. And then last but not least, we'll also meet with Gordon White, who's the director of sales engineering with Samsara. So if we can, let's take a look at some of these poll results. We'll get an idea of some of the, that makes sense. The majority of the team here, folks here with us today, are in the local government arena. Some state folks as well, so welcome, as well as some academia, industry, and other disciplines there. So yeah, great. Good to see you all here today. We also have folks, the majority of us are here in the United States with some Canadian folks. So welcome. Always good to see y'all. And then it looks like we got some folks crossing some time zones here, coming all the way from Asia. So again, welcome. Thank you for attending. Some various disciplines in the business sector, land and public administration, transportation, public information, some emergency and public safety folks, great, public works as well, and a lot of parks and recreation teams. So it looks like we've got a wide group here. So appreciate you coming in and taking some time throughout the session. Little housekeeping on today's session, it will be recorded. And there's a section to post questions. So as panelists are giving their presentation, feel free to use that Q&A section in the Zoom call. And at the end, we'll all reconvene and meet back and answer as many of those questions as we have time for. So on behalf of our speakers today, I want to thank you for taking the time to meet with us. I would also like to thank our friends at Asset Mapping and Connect Me for their assistance in making today's session possible. So with that, let's dive into our first presentation with Dr. Nick Smilovsky and Bad Elf. Nick, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you so much, James, for that. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. You should be able to see it in just a moment. Hopefully with some techno wizardry, we're all good to go. So I am leading off the charge today. Presentation we're going to be talking about is I am the Geospatial Lorax, and I speak for the trees. Perhaps you are a fan of Dr. Seuss. My name is Dr. Nikolas Smilovsky. I am a certified arborist. Fun fact, I'm also an avid disc golf fan. So if you see the map on the screen, I'm going to be advocating for some more disc golf management as we talk about GIS being used for parks and recreational management. Okay, so before we get any further, though, I do want to just make one side comment that Bad Elf is a sponsor of this event. And so coming at it from a little bit of a different approach, I do want to welcome anybody at any point during this event to ask questions. We're going to do that live Q&A at the end. But any follow-up stuff, if you want to reach out to me directly, I am here to help. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. Quick agenda. I have a very fast-paced presentation today, so we'll blaze through this. But we've got a solutions poll. So if we could go ahead and throw up the poll, And so this is for everybody to answer if you have just a moment. We'll be running these throughout my presentation, so feel free to take your time and kind of scroll through. But I'd like to know if you are currently implementing a GIS solution for your parks and recreation, asset management. Also, are you interested in implementing said solution if you don't have one today? And 3, if you do have a solution today, a GIS digital asset management solution, would you be interested in speaking with somebody to maximize your solution? Because there's always a way to get better. And then last but not least, do you have GPS, global positioning systems, or today we have a new ubiquitous term called GNSS, or global navigation satellite systems. These are those devices that we go collect, assets like trees. If you need something like that, please let us know. So those polls are going to be running in the background, and we're going to keep going through this. I'm going to help set the stage following James's great introduction of why we're all sitting here today, spending some of our valuable time talking about parks and recreation. So we've got some information there. I want to talk quickly why we believe, and I would think that all of the presenters today would agree, why a digital system of record, or a GIS, Geographic Information System, is probably a good thing to consider adopting. If you've not heard of Bad Elf, of course, I'm going to make sure you do know who we are. So a quick introduction of who Bad Elf is and what we do and what we make. We'll quickly talk about tree management solutions, specifically wrapped around the Esri ecosystem, something to consider if you are looking into upgrading or developing this type of management system for your organization. And then last but not least, before I wrap it up, we'll look at the poll results at the very end of the presentation. Okay, and let's do it. So I want to bring an academic approach to why we're all sitting here. And parks, we all know the idea of, what a park is. You can Google search park and you drive down the road and you're at a park. But in academia and in other spaces, in the architecture space, and perhaps Justin Azevedo, registered landscape architect, during his presentation, he may go into this a little bit more in depth, but we often call parks open space, right? And so there's been a lot of research over the years on how open space or green space impacts or benefits humanity. And so a study published in the Journal of Environmental Management, for an example, found that increasing the proportion of green space in cities could reduce healthcare costs significantly. Specifically, up to 10% increase in green space was directly correlated or associated with an average healthcare savings of around $3.8 million annually, with a city of only about 250,000. So let me say that again. So in a city of 250,000 people, if you increase green space or parks by 10%, you're actually going to save the taxpayers up to $3.8 million annually. So there are actual benefits associated with these green spaces. Enhanced physical activity, right? So Research Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, indicates people that live closer to parks, get this, are almost 50% more likely to meet recommended levels of physicality. So if you don't have access to a park, equitable access to these green spaces, your actual physical activity can go down. And I should mention the first one, it's $3 million in savings in healthcare. So I should say that increasing green space actually saves money in terms of individual healthcare. Mental health is actually pretty astounding as well. So the World Health Organization says access to green spaces is associated with a 20% reduction in the risk of mental health issues, such as depression and anxiety. In the United States right now, we have some of the highest levels of these types of disorders going on, and just literally having access to this green space, to these trees, to these parks, is associated with a 20% reduction of risk in mental health issues. I also wanted to throw out there that currently, if you were to do a search, they say that there are about 423 national park sites in the United States, of which 63 are technically designated national parks by NPS, the National Park Service. There are also approximately, and I say approximately because it changes all the time, 6,792 state parks in our 50 great states. And there are roughly 11,000 local park and recreation agencies across the United States. So over 400 national parks, almost 7,000 state parks, and 11,000 local park and recreational agencies that deal with these places. Now, Let's then compare that to the populations of the United States. Currently, we estimate in the United States there's about 334 million people. That means that there's approximately one park per 46,000 plus people. So imagine that there's one park for almost 50,000 people in the United States. There's also an estimated roughly 228 billion trees in the United States. So that's about 683 trees per person. And when you put it into perspective and you know that these trees and that these open space parks are helping physicality, they're lowering healthcare costs, and mental issues are being reduced, the honest conclusion that everybody should have right away is trees and parks are important. And how do we take this super important asset that literally isn't just there so we can play baseball on the weekends or a game of hoops, right? Or go for a hike. It's truly a benefit for society as a whole. So why do we need systems of record to help manage these places, right? Well, literally, we need to know. You can't manage what you don't know. How many trees do you have? How many benches do you have? Where are your trails? Where are your disc golf holes? Where are your buckets, the rings that you're shooting at if you're managing a disc golf course? You can't better manage something without actually knowing what you have out there. So the first step is going and collecting these assets and knowing their locations, but not just their locations, but all about them. What's the status of the asset? How healthy is the tree? How large is it? Is there graffiti on it, right? Maintenance planning. So I mentioned graffiti. So if you have a park and you're properly maintaining it through a digital system of record like a GIS, you may implement something like a workforce solution so you can actually plan your maintenance. Where do you need to clean? Where do you need to prune? Where do you need to cut? Obviously, a system like this is going to allow you to be the general in command of your park, right? You can actually make intelligible resource allocation. Of course, compliance and reporting. We're not going into a world of less compliance and reporting, only more compliance and reporting. So might as well get on the bandwagon now. GISs and digital system of records are literally the database backbone of this, right? And community engagement. I think we often forget that at the end of the day, the park serves the populace and the public, right? And so GIS through dashboards and different types of online endeavors, you can really disseminate this information easily and quickly. And all of this is to be wrapped around a nice data-driven decision-making bow that the more information to have, the better informed decisions we can make that betters the park and betters the constituents enjoying said park. So who in the heck is Bad Elf, right? So if you've not heard of Bad Elf, no, we do not sell skateboards, and though we may enjoy them, we have been around about 14 years. We are a manufacturer of GPS, or global positioning systems. Those are those devices that GIS people, surveyors, government agencies like to use to go out and collect data, right? And so our devices connect to any type of phone, tablet, or laptop. We can work with iOS, Android, or Windows. You can basically connect us with any type of app that you choose. Today, we're going to be kind of talking about the Esri application, but there are many others out there that you could explore depending on your specific needs. And last but not least, at Bad Elf, I manage and run a team called our Geospatial Enablement team. This team comes alongside of our hardware GPS to help implement solutions like tree and park management, as you'll see. Just cutting to the chase, these are our two GPSs. We have the Bad Elf Flex, which is going to be your fully survey grade device. We have our new Bad Elf Flex Mini. This is something that attaches right to your cell phone or tablet, making it an extremely easy device to use. We like to say that it takes a three-handed job of field data collection down to one. If you haven't done outside and actually collected data in a while, think back to your college classes decades ago. You'll remember that you get to carry around a lot of gear, right? And I'm not going to get into all the accuracies, but suffice to say that if you are interested in going and collecting your assets of your park, like trees and benches and things, your landscape furniture, Bad Elf creates receivers that are extremely easy to use and that you can implement quickly. So take a side step here. I mentioned that our team, the Geospatial Enablement team, actually helps implement these solutions with our customers, whether you're a state and local government agency or you're a AEC firm, an architecture firm, for an example, looking to help service the local municipalities. We use specifically the Esri ARC solution for tree management. This is a website that I can share with you if you're interested later, but kind of going through this story map, we help implement comprehensive tree management solutions. And with my background being a certified arborist, I'd like to think that we do a pretty good job of it. And we have actually helped several arborists and arborist companies at this point help implement their solutions, of which you are going to hear from one in a little bit. Just going through this ArcGIS solution really takes an off-the-shelf approach to make it easy, but then somebody like Bad Elf can come alongside your organization and kind of hold your hand and help implement something that's extremely complex, extremely quickly and easily. The benefits of the solution are you're going to have a higher precision of mapping, efficient field work, real-time syncs, informed insight, community engagement, cost savings. We're able to do reporting around tree health, tree species, overall trends. We work with things like the USD iTree solution. The structure of solution is very adaptable to your organization, no matter if you're a tier 1 through a 5, or you're a 1 million person city, or you're the local town with only 5,000. We're able to bring all the components from the hardware of the GPS to the software in Esri to the know-how in the office to help create deliverables. And so you can go out into the field and actually collect locations, for an example, of live oaks. If you're around, like I am in Texas, we have a lot of live oaks around here. You can collect the condition assessments, all the different types of inspection details you may need. We help set up tree assessments and workforces. We can use Survey123 to actually create form-based apps so that you can collect data without sort of that map-centric feel, making it an extremely simple solution. We like to say KISS, the old adage from the Navy, keep it simple, stupid, like don't have to overcomplicate things. We can create dashboards. And so once you go out and collect the locations of your assets like trees, you can then load all of that into a real-time dashboard. And so you can actively manage, your assets, like what tree needs, perhaps there's a tree outside. If you're in Arizona, we have eucalyptus out there. We call them widow makers because these eucalyptuses like to split, and they have these decurrent branches like to fall on people, right? Maybe during some maintenance, you notice that there's one of these bad branches, and you put it into the system so that the next time the arborist is going around and pruning, they can mitigate these types of issues. At the end of the day, our goal is to take you from 0 to hero, make it extremely simple, that there should be no excuse as to why you wouldn't want to use a GIS to help manage your trees. As I mentioned, these trees are such an important asset for our communities, right? It would be almost a disservice at this point to not use GIS. And I'm not even talking like AI, but GIS wraps in AI these days, where you can literally use something like random forest to help predict shade master plans and canopy coverages. So again, how do we get there? Well, I'd like to challenge you that Bad Elf could help you get there, whether it's through consulting or training or getting you hardware. Our geospatial enablement team is basically there all day, every day for you. There's several members of the team that we can leverage their individual experiences. And again, we want to take you from 0 to hero to help that process. We often joke at Bad Elf that we live vicariously through our customers. We don't live by a P&L, report. So at the end of the day, it's not all about profit for us. It's actually about coming alongside and seeing you all out there do good things. I don't know about you. I go to parks a lot. I love parks. I like walking my dog in them. My wife and I like to go out on them. It would be a sad day to think that we don't have parks for our future generations. Let us provide this turnkey process. We help our customers choose these right products, solutions, and services based on your needs, not what we perceive it to be. And sometimes this seems very immense, again, if you're just getting into GIS for the first time. And instead of thinking about it as like an aircraft carrier, let us help you think about it as like a swift boat. Like, we can come in and literally help you get your trees collected in your park. And then let's start a crawl, walk, run approach and help you get up to speed. We offer all different types of consulting packages. Again, as I mentioned, we specifically like using Esri Arc Solutions, but we have others if needed. But the tree management solution from Esri is astounding. And so we create some of these deliverables so you don't have to. Okay, so I'm probably running extremely long, but just to make sure we've got some poll results, I think everybody's probably had it in by now. Looks to be about this quite interesting, actually. So about 41% of you said that you do not, or I'm sorry, 41% said you do have a GIS solution, while 45% of you said you did not. and another 14% said you were unsure. So that leads me to believe that if over 50% of the sample does not have a GIS, there's a gap here, and there's an opportunity for us all to be thinking about how can we do this better. People interested in a solution, about 35. People not interested, 7%. I'm guessing you may have a solution already. Maybe interested, 36%. Already implementing, around 20%. It does sound like there are some people out there, about 16% of you, that are interested in talking to some of the people presenting today about a potential solution. And so we'll be in touch. Thank you for that. And last but not least, in terms of high accuracy, lots of people say that they need them, about 60%. And then what's interesting is a lot of you said that, about 40% to be exact, that you have external ways to get data collection, in which that's totally great, right? We, in this world, oftentimes, as you know, most of you are from state and local government, you want to sub that work out to, say, one of the people that are going to be coming up next. And so with that, thank you for our presentation. Thank you for coming to our sponsored event today. Sorry I had to get a little preachy there with the GPS, but it pays the bills, keeps the lights on. But let's actually turn it over to an end user. This is my friend and colleague, John Snow. No, he's not from Game of Thrones. We're going to get that joke out of the way, out of the gate. But John, if you could come on stage, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. John is a certified arborist, and also a co-founder and owner of his company, CheckUp. So without further ado, John, I'm going to be quiet and hopefully not break anything. It is all you, sir.
Great. Thanks so much, Nick. Stole some of my thunder there, but we're going to try to make this work. I hope everybody can see my screen. My name is John Snow. I'm the managing partner here at CheckUp. I'm a consulting arborist, board certified master arborist. I've been doing this for over 30 years now. I got involved with GIS and GPS solutions way back in 2002 and still doing it today. So what I want to talk about and bring to today's presentation is the three-legged stool of trees, in my view. And this is going to be a very quick presentation. I could probably talk for 20, 30 minutes on each of these topics. But these topics we're going to discuss today are trees as assets, competence, and funding, because at the end of the day, all three of these things play a part. So first, we need to establish and agree that trees are a community asset. We can see here these live oaks on the left. These are large, mature, just beautiful trees in a park setting. And then here on the right, we have this little walkway, bike path with these, seats lining the parkway where people could sit and rest and relax. I really think that, in our park situations, trees are that community asset. It's not just a tree, it's an asset. And when we start to view it as an asset, it really changes the dynamic on how we approach them. Trees require management, plain and simple. If we want to get the environmental benefits, the health and safety benefits, and avoiding some safety issues, obviously, and get that aesthetic and social value, we have to properly manage them. The problem that I see in parks, and you can see here on the left, is a community association that I work with. And you can see here on the left, all these trees along the roads. They're pretty easy to go in and drop that point with GIS solutions, just dropping that point right where that tree is. The problem is where we get these clusters of trees, which is what we see here on the right. And that requires GPS accuracy. You need to be able to get down to that sub-meter level in order to accurately know where these trees are. Out here on the left, again, many of the common solutions that are out there available to arborists are kind of a drop and point type of thing where you're just dropping that icon on top of approximately where you think that tree is. You just can't do that in many park situations. So, like I said, most arborists typically aren't utilizing GPS solutions. It's just dropping points on an aerial map, and that leads to a lot of inaccuracies. So GPS ensures that our maintenance tasks are going to be correctly applied to the right trees. Are you sending your crews to prune that problem tree? Or like Nick had said, that tree that has split? They need to know exactly where that is. That's going to help us quickly address these problems and these safety hazards. Plus, it's going to help support better planning and development of park infrastructure, particularly if you're utilizing an Esri type of solution or GIS where you have multiple layers, where you can actually look at where are the utilities, where are the sidewalks, where are the roads, and where the trees are in relationship to them accurately. And that's the key point here. You have to have that geospatial accuracy. So a lot of people might think, well, hey, let's just use our cell phone data. Well, this map here, actually, I collected the data using my cell phone, and you can see in the center here, this heavily wooded area. And because of just the GPS reflection, I guess that's the technical term, I don't know. Nick can speak more to that, but this is just a really good example of how collecting data with a phone just leads to inaccuracies. Every single one of these trees was actually within that wooded lot. None of them were outside along the roads. And you can see they were way, way off. It's just, you can't use it that in those kind of scenarios. So cell phones really are going to have about a 30 to 60 foot variance in most conditions, particularly wooded conditions. So that means if you're inventorying like a 1/10 of an acre plot, that's about 37-foot radius plot. Some trees that you're plugging in are going to be in the plot, and some will actually be outside of the plot as far as the final data output. So is that tree over here, or is it way over there, 30, 60 feet away? When the field guy goes out there to do the work, he's going to have difficulty locating that tree. Hence the reason why we need to have that geospatial accuracy in order to properly manage the tree assets. Next, let's talk about competence. Why is competency important? I think that competency leads to actionable results. Without having these actionable recommendations that arborists can make as far as the overall condition of the tree, helping to prioritize the work, what good is your inventory? Is it just we have the locations of all the trees and the species and maybe the diameter, maybe condition rating? We need to know more in order for us to do work on these trees and maintain them properly. That requires a certain level of competency. As you can see here on left, this is that same community. And I've just broken it down into red, yellow, and green priorities. Very simple, easy to use. Here on the right was a little bit more of a complex thing. There was actually subcategories for each of the red, green, and yellow categories. That helps define the scopes of work and the types of work that's going to be performed during that maintenance cycle. Another important part is your staff and contractors should be ISA certified. Conducting the inventories. I see a lot of instances where inventories are being conducted by volunteers or college interns, and that's fine. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. but you need to understand your competency levels are significantly lower when you're utilizing staff or contractors that are untrained. So if you're hiring contractors, I think it's very important to make sure that they have ISA certified arborists that are actually conducting the inventory, not necessarily just supervising, but conducting it. And these individuals need to be trained and knowledgeable in rating the tree conditions. I could take 10 arborists, put them around a tree, and have them each rate the condition of the tree. And invariably, people are going to come to a lot of different conclusions. Is that tree in good condition, poor condition, or excellent condition? It's going to vary depending on the arborist and everything. But there's ways that that can be systematized so that you're getting good, actionable results that take a lot of that subjectivity out of it. It's very, very important. Another mistake that I see a lot of places doing is the people that are doing the inspections, collecting the data on the trees, they're not tree risk assessment qualified. They don't really understand how tree risk is properly done and assessed. So there is actual qualification for that. And I think that that's critical if in your parks, you're going to be evaluating tree risk. You want to make sure that you have somebody that's qualified. And we can go on. There's a lot more that we could discuss there. So you're probably thinking, well, I've got to hire a certified arborist or get a vendor that's going to have certified arborists. That's going to cost a ton of money. Plus, I've got to invest in all this hardware and software. Well, yes, you do. But the costs have come way down for tree inventories and such. We don't necessarily need to have survey grade. We don't have to know exactly where that tree is within the centimeter. We can get that to sub-meter. We're in really good shape. There's a lot of great solutions available now that are much more affordable. You can actually own the equipment. Bad Elf is a great example. I have a couple of Bad Elf units that my team utilizes. It's very, very cost effective to go out and collect this sub-meter accurate data. But where are we going to find these dollars? There's a lot of funding that's available through your state forest service or other agencies for grant opportunities. Now, I forgot to post in the chat there a survey at the beginning. Hopefully we can get that survey up and we'll give people a few minutes to go ahead and answer that. And we'll get going with some of that. Love to hear your feedback on those poll questions. But let's talk about these grant opportunities. I live here in Florida. We have the Florida Urban and Community Forestry Grants, which is a program that's administered through the state for federal funding. Almost every single state has these urban and community forest grants, and there's other grant opportunities available too through different organizations and stuff, both at the federal and state level. So when you're looking to get funded for park and tree inventories, whether that's tied in with a street tree inventory or whether it's just a park inventory, depending on how your municipality's organized, these grant opportunities are there for you that will help get that funding so that you can purchase equipment, so that you can fund the staff or hire a contractor to do these kinds of projects. Many times it may be grant matching funds, where if the project is, say, $25,000, you'll have to come in with 12.5, and then the the funding agency would cover the balance. So there's a lot of opportunities as far as that goes. So let's talk a little bit about the keys to getting successful grant. This is one of the areas that I train and support a lot of my clients with, is how to get these grants. SOAP is a management framework. So we talk about SOAP. This is, we'll get into that in a second, but SOAP is a management framework that the Forest Service uses to evaluate communities and grant funding. And that's the operative part here. The Forest Service is often looking at this SOAP framework as that guiding reference. So understanding this is important. There's 4 basic components of SOAP. Staff, which goes back to competency. Ordinance, which is like your municipal ordinances and such. That's one of the goals of that management framework. Advocacy and advisory. So does your community have an advocacy group, a tree commission, a board, things like that? Both of those can be advisory and advocacy. And ultimately, the outcome of that funding is to be able to develop a plan. So many of these funding opportunities are available, and you're going to be evaluated based on the staff and your ordinance, your advocacy and advisory and plan. So some quick little tips. First thing is contact your urban community forestry grant programs coordinator, and that could be in the state or region, depending on where you're at in the country. Learn and understand the timeline for each type of grant programs. There's a number of different programs out there. Some of them are for tree planting. If you want to get involved with planting more trees in your parks, there's opportunities there. If you're looking to do an inventory, you can do that. If you're looking to develop a management plan, which goes back to this overarching GIS solution, that management plan can be part of these grant programs as well. This goes to the grant categories. You need to understand the deadlines for these programs and meet the deadlines. Obviously, if you turn it in a day late, it's not going to get approved. And then you need to understand the documents that are needed for that specific grant category. Here in Florida, you know, I sit on the grant review committee, and it's amazing when you see some of these grant applications come through and it doesn't even align with the specific grant program that's being offered. It's kind of funny, because that's an easy, nope, they don't qualify. You need to make sure you're filling out all parts and all blanks in the application. In many cases, these applications are multiple pages. It's not complicated, it's not hard. You just got to take your time, go through. Don't miss things like a signature or a date. Just simple little things. Just make sure all the blanks are filled. And then submit your application package on time or early. And then make sure that you're following it up with that urban forestry grant program coordinators. Kind of see where you're falling within that whole program. If your program doesn't have, in my opinion, accurate data that includes GPS locations, if it doesn't have competent staff or contractors or good funding, there's a good chance it's going to be garbage in and garbage out. Quite simply, the quality of the input with competent staff, accurate data, is going to determine the quality of the output that you get. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and conclude. Again, my name is John Snow. I'm a board certified master arborist, and love to talk a little bit about this poll a little bit. So what I'm seeing here is about 64% of the people are already using ArcGIS or Esri based. We have some people that are using some other software solutions, or 26% aren't using any. Very interesting data. And then, does your software solution give actionable recommendations and prioritize work? This is pretty interesting right there. 32% of people are saying, yes, we're getting recommendations and we're prioritizing work. But over a quarter of you are saying, no, we're not getting any recommendations, we're not prioritizing the work. And another 42% don't even know. So almost 2/3 of the people here attending today don't even know if their software is giving them, and their data collection process is giving them recommendations and prioritizing the work. I think that's critical. How can we manage our tree assets if we don't even know what actionable recommendations there are and how to prioritize that? And then we have how important is collecting accurate tree locations. 85% of people said they don't think it's very important. Well, let's see here. Nope, I get that wrong. Not important at all. It's 42% said that. That's interesting. I think we've kind of proven here today, without getting GPS accurate locations, there's going to be some problems as far as your delivery on the field work. These are some pretty interesting results. So 32% of the people are aware of grant funding opportunities, 68% aren't. Hey, if you need to find out more information about grant funding opportunities, definitely feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a direct message if you're already connected with me on LinkedIn. Only 14% have applied and received for grant funding opportunities. Wow. With the IRA grant funding, that was over $1 billion that came out last year. Only 14% of people have applied for and received grant funding. That's pretty amazing. And then, are your staff or contracted personnel competent in collecting and managing tree asset data? Only 25% of people said that they have an ISA certified arborist on staff with necessary qualifications and training. A lot of people, another 24% have contracted out, and 38% of people don't have competent staff or volunteers. Very interesting results here. Again, my name is John Snow. If you or your staff's interested in advancing your arborist career or know somebody that does, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to discuss the arborist prep class that I put out, as well as some of the other training and support services. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jordan. Thank you.
Welcome, Justin Azevedo. Thank you. And thank you, John.
Hello, hello. Great presentation, John. So I get to take over the reins now. So my topic, we're going to shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about trees still, because we do a lot of tree planning in my office, and urban forestry management and urban tree planning and shade and a little bit of everything. But we also do a lot of parks and recreation management and all other kinds of fun stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about all of that. So who am I? My name is Justin Azevedo. I'm a licensed landscape architect and urban planner. I am the principal and founder of the Design Laboratory. We're based out of here, close to Phoenix, Arizona, and Tempe. It is hot out here right now, so I know you're all asking that question. I think it's going to be like 112 degrees today. So, you know, just nice and cool outside. So those trees are really important that John was talking about earlier. But Other things I do, I'm also an instructor at Arizona State University, faculty associates at the School of Architecture, the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture, and currently the president of the American Society of Landscape Architects here in Arizona. But as an office, we do a lot of this large scale style planning where we focus on parks and recreation facilities, we focus on active transportation, we focus on trails planning, and a lot of sustainability planning. So all these pieces tend to come together and they tend to work really, really well when we actually have these asset management databases that we utilize through GIS. So that's a lot of what I'm going to talk through. I'm a teacher, so I like to go a little bit back to the history. So get prepared for a short history lesson as we move through here. But I think it helps to explain why GIS works really well with systems. I'm also going to talk through how we actually use them in the field and how easy it is these days. But I'm going to really start this off with a quote from Jen Gell, who's this amazing urban planner out of Scandinavia. And it's a statement that couldn't be more true. And first we shape the cities and then they shape us. Like Nick was talking about earlier in his presentation, just the countless benefits that come from good city planning, just simply having park spaces accessible to people, it just has these amazing repercussions in the most beautiful way that help to support happy, healthy living communities, building something that looks future forward versus just responding to things as they are today or as issues come up. To me, I think those community spaces are some of the most important parts about building a community within any atmosphere. We work in towns as small as 500 people, and then we work for the city of Phoenix, who's the fifth largest metro in the country, and we're also working all across the Southwest and really all across the country right now doing this type of work. But what we really found is that the spaces where people come together tend to be the most important. And then how do they get to those places and how do we utilize those spaces? And we have to make sure these spaces are, again, happy and healthy places to support a happy and healthy community. And this can be done in so many different ways, and just be able to track this and manage it in a very simple and elegant format, I think is really, really important because one of the biggest questions we often get from folks that don't do or utilize a lot of GIS, I apologize for those that utilize GIS a lot. I promise there's some stuff here in the second half of my presentation for you, where what does it actually do for our spaces and systems? Unfortunately, GIS doesn't look this pretty. One of the things we like to do in our office is make everything look gorgeous. That's the goal. But we want to look at how do we start to manage these different pieces within our system, whether we're doing trail management or trail construction or future trail planning. If we are getting ready to put in new facilities, proposing new facilities, we have existing facilities. Marking out exactly where that facility is using things like the Bad Elf. We're all just gonna keep saying it because it's like the coolest little GPS system that's out there in the market. And it's handheld, easy, can't say enough good things. But we can track it. We can say what kind of an asset is it? What year is it installed? What is the current health of it? We can continue to update that. What kind of a maintenance practices it typically needs? We can track that through our systems and put into asset management systems even outside of GIS and have those start to correlate and come together. We can attach current and updated images of these things. And we can do that with everything. We do it in parks and recreation master plans all the time. We've got about 3 of them ongoing in our office at the moment. And one of the things that we preach is one of the most important things you can do is actually go out and understand what you have for facilities, what is the age, what is the health, so you can better plan for what is your next year, 5 years, 10 years, and appropriately plan for your capital improvement projects and really just ongoing maintenance. So you have a better idea of what's happening in your community. And it also gives you these great statistics of what are the benefits we have in our community. Oftentimes our economic development departments or our tourism boards or just our city managers, or whoever's in charge of doing a little bit of that, the beefing up, what makes our city or town so cool, or county or state, they love to utilize this type of data. Because what it really helps us to do is it manages our assets and it assists in that short, mid, and long-term planning, but that planning comes in all different types of categories. Like I was talking about, it could be tourism down to what is the next 10 years of our Parks and Rec system. First time I took a class on GIS was about 2004. It was a bit of I'm sorry for those who love GIS forever and always. I found it a very clunky system back in the day. But it's no longer a system that is just purely meant for GIS technicians and those that might have a PhD in it, like Nick has. It now has this much more top-down approach where we can get into these highly nitty-gritty elements, but we can also start to develop it out for different levels of users and input data, and having all these different types of dashboards. We have access to coming in and understanding what's happening and make these wiser decisions that are really based on actual metrics within our GIS systems for our cities. And GIS, we can use it to track everything, and I'll talk about that in a minute here. GIS really isn't that old, along with city planning, believe it or not. So I'd like to kind of coordinate the foundation of GIS to what we also correlate to what is modern day planning at the city level. Modern day planning really did not start till GIS really kind of got kicked off because it started to help us to make wiser and smarter decisions. 1854, John Snow, the man was documenting cholera outbreaks in London and really started to create these first density heat maps for understanding where are issue areas, or which ended up being turned into opposite things of now we can track things that are doing well within the area. But it's the first time this is really happening. Frederick Law Olmsted, he's really well known for Central Park in New York, but one of his best ones he's known for spatial planning that I like to refer to as actually the Emerald Necklace in Boston. You've got Daniel Burnham, who planned, he had hands in planning probably half the cities in the US in the early 1900s. One of his ones he's most famous for is actually outside of the US in Manila in the Philippines, but utilizing smart decision-making factors through information that was gathered on site. So before we even had GPSs, we were still using this concept of how are we starting to build on this system and utilize things that we have as layers, whether it's where's the river going, where we have flood basins, where do we have existing flows. But that really got kicked off into the next level to what we know today with Roger Tomlinson in 1963. My favorite is their original machine they built with IBM, where it's literally a good old school drafting board that was connected to a computer that spat out punch cards as you traced over maps to give you overlays and be able to compute it out. Ian McHarg, if you haven't heard of him, highly recommend you dive into it. He's the reason why a lot of the GIS industry is the way it is today, with this concept of layer caking that we'll talk about in a moment. And then ArcGIS, founded in 1982. This is really the gold standard at the moment. There's others out there. This is the Esri suite, as we now refer to it. But this is really kind of where we've come from and where we're going. So Ian McHarg made this amazing book called Design with Nature, where we talked about layer caking. And it's this idea of how do we break down what are the different elements that we have in our community, and then how do we start to make smarter decisions on top of that? So whether it's simple things like what are our demographics and land uses, what are the plant habitats, what do we have for surface water, groundwater, what do we have for hydrology issues, geology issues, and benefits? And how do we start to layer those on top of each other and start to understand how do we appropriately plan things in the long term? So this is looking at really long-term citywide planning and how this starts to come together. And we're going to start to get more into that. This was all done on vellum up until far too recently. It feels like, I think we just got rid of the last bits of vellum we had hanging out in our office of layered maps. But what does that actually do for parks and recreation planning today? What it does is it allows us to document and manage our resources. So this is a snippet from a recent shade and tree master plan that we completed for the town of Gilbert in Arizona. What this map is showing is we actually documented every single tree across the entire town. And that allowed us to go through and to create a heat map that allowed us to make adjustable decisions to figure out what areas we need to focus more on by what is the level of shade coverage. So this map actually serves as a slide scale, essentially, of what areas are more important to focus on and what are less. And right now we're looking at what's hitting our minimum goal of 15% shade coverage. And then we can keep moving that up to see where our pain points are if we want to hit higher levels of coverage or lower levels of coverage. And it starts to allow us to focus in on certain areas. So again, just this idea of well-informed decision-making. Because the applications that we can have within our communities, like I said, we're working on a number of parks and recreation master plans right now. We go through and we document every facility that you have on site. We give it a health rating. We take photo documentation of it. We say what those things are within those areas. And it allows us to create these sheets that come out that we'll talk about in a moment, where we have these asset tables where we can see what are the things that might need to be maintained more frequently and actually have a running list of them and keep a better tabs of it versus just like, oh yeah, we saw that park down the street. It looked like something was wrong with it. It was probably at an end of life. It could be something else going on. Active transportation and trail planning. We do a lot of trail planning in this office as well. So how do we actually look into the future, and how do we start planning out using topography and other resource data mapping for how we appropriately place things, as well as multi-use paths. We often also look at bike lanes, a little bit of everything, street management systems. I know there's a lot of park and recreation folks out there that are also really the de facto maintenance for the entire city. So oftentimes you're doing a lot of city right-of-ways, so this becomes important as well. Demographic studies. This allows us to make decisions based on what are the current demographics of our area, or what is the land planning that we have within these areas. How do we start to adjust it and account for that in our density of park systems, et cetera, et cetera. Modeling new systems, tree documentation, which we've talked about a lot already, and community input, which we haven't talked about a whole lot yet. This is one of my favorite pieces. We're getting ready to start wrapping up the Gilbert master plan right now, their parks and recreation and open space planning. So we love to use like these different types of systems. Like this is a social pinpoint website where it allows people to go in. This gets cleared every month or so. That way it doesn't get too cluttered, but allows us to go through and we can find out where are the pain points that the community thinks of? Where are these points that are doing really well? Where do they have cool new fun ideas? So there's lots of different ways that GIS is now starting to inform what the public is doing outside of just using it as an Esri program with ArcGIS. We can also use it as this data collecting tool with the public, and it doesn't have to be them going out and doing a volunteer program or tagging things. We're just collecting data from them to get a better understanding of what the community needs are. One of the most frequent questions we get is on methods of GIS data collection. So satellite systems tends to be really common, aerial sensing, LiDAR systems. We have land records like planning, essentially, or county assessors, census data, USGS for topography is typically all across. We have access to it all across the US if you don't have something more specialized for your community. In field surveys is typically the thing that most systems need to move to the next level of some sort, but you can make a lot of really informed decisions typically from just things that are already open source within GIS that might exist within your town that you just don't even know about yet. So the thing we're going to talk about are lovely field surveys a little more. This is us out in the field actually documenting some trees not too long ago. I'm going to kind of walk you through what's our process typically for going out and doing this, because this is why I find this so much more accessible than it used to be for most folks. So you don't have to be a GIS tech whiz like Nick is. I'm not going to claim to be one, but we have some in our office here that just do amazing work. But the ArcGIS field maps allows us to go out and collect data in a really simple way. We're also working on the shade and tree master plan for the city of Scottsdale currently in Arizona. So you can see we've selected a number of these sites that represent or are unique areas within the city to better identify what are the outcomes and solutions that may be able to expand across the city, or in these pain points, or in these points where we think we may have areas for improvement or we're doing really well. So the first thing we're looking at is their little downtown core. We've already completed this. I think there's something like 10,000 trees and shade structures within their downtown area, or about 9,000 and something. So we can go down and we can go all the way back down to this little tree that we went out and we marked with our little GPS. So I clicked on that tree there. It tells me what the object ID is, so I can track them really easily. We go out and we tell it what kind of a tree it is, what's our diameter, breast height. We have a basic rating system on it, on what the health of that tree is within its conditions, our study area, and we get to attach a photo to it. Oftentimes with trees, we'll attach multiple photos or different types of facilities. It allows us to go in and have a great running record of what is actually happening with our assets in their community, which allows us to make smarter, best practice decisions through the future as we start to look at, well, hey, you know what? They marked a series of these trees, ones out there. It's on their top priority list. They said we need to go look at them within the next month. Typically, it's because we have things like Nick was talking about with widowmakers and other issues like that. Diving into a new area, I went out a couple days ago just to show how this kind of works. So this is a neighborhood in the south. We're documenting some of these trees within the private realm if they are having an impact within the public realm. So marking these trees, we can go in, we have it all set up for it to be really easy to call it what type of tree it is, what's our diameter breast height, select your condition rating, what's your study area you're working in. And almost anybody can do this as long as they have the proper training with assessing trees. But it's the same type of system when we go out and document 10,000 different assets within a Parks and Recreation system that are just hard assets. So not trees, no soft, it's just hard assets. We can track it really well. Some of our newest recruits, particularly in that like Gilbert project, and we do this on pretty much everything we're working on. We know we're not going to be there forever and always. We'd love to be hired back to come out and keep documenting things because we like to get out of the office. But one of the things we're working on is we're actually training up, we're working on training up the park ranger program within Gilbert to be able to go out and do more of a constant updating system and have either a 1 month or biannual documentation and update of what's happening with the facilities, just so we can keep a better range of what's happening with the health. They're already typically the people within that community that people are comfortable seeing out there. They're documenting things anyways. They're normally the first ones that tell us when something's broken because they're normally the first people that get contacted if something is broken. So there's lots of different ways to do this. It doesn't have to be just all 100% consultant based. If you're new to it, highly recommend starting with getting somebody in there to help you get this set up. But there are ways to do this on the lower end of the budget. So I want to encourage everybody to do these types of systems. So my encouragement, get out there and do it. We had a group of 7 people that went out and documented all of Gilbert's parks, and Gilbert's not a small place, and it has a lot of big parks, and they did it in less than 2 weeks, documenting every facility out there. So it's doable. It's not that hard of a process, and it does help you make smarter decisions moving into the future. Because oftentimes we still run into a lot of smaller parks and rec communities that are just using a basic Excel sheet to track things, which there's nothing wrong with that. And you can still do that. We can export everything that we're collecting within these ArcGIS collector programs to export these into spreadsheets, and we can make decisions off of that, or we can import them into other project management or asset management software. So what it does, it helps us keep it all together. We have a good understanding of where it's at, what's happening with it, and allows us to keep this living system running. This is from the Tempe Park and Recreation Master Plan that we completed back in 2021, just showing, hey, there's other things that does really well for us. Tempe is all about being a 20-minute city. They want to have everybody within 20 minutes of everything. And whether that's through walking, biking, or bus. And so trying to get a good measurement on what does that mean for what do we want our access to be for our neighborhood parks. We know those typically don't get people more than a half mile out. So what does that mean versus when we get up to the range of community parks? Typically, we're looking at more of a mile out from a community park. And then this one's, for some reason, the title didn't change, but this one's looking at the regional parks. This town has a high density of regional style parks. So what is the coverage of those regional parks looking at a 3-mile radius? So being able to make better decisions on being able to go back and go, hey, these neighborhood parks, we've got some pockets over here, but then we overlaid it in GIS, and you can see that actually this whole area over here is all industrial area. So it may not be as high of a priority, but it is a priority all the same, because those are the people that work there. Not everybody gets to live and work and recreate in their own town. So we want to create a balance within these systems. So that was one of the recommendations that came out of it. Understanding where people are coming in with their comments. This is from our needs assessment from the public in Tempe. And again, you can see we're getting these comments from outside the city because oftentimes you recreate and work in places where you don't actually live. So understanding how these things start to bridge outside the community, especially in a metropolitan like Phoenix, where you start to have a lot of these blurred lines on what facilities belong to who, and then understanding how these start to serve your community appropriately. What is our density of acres of parks for density of people? So you can see This is on our lower side, but we also happen to have less people. So looking at where are we best serving our community and where are we missing out on serving our community? Okay, I think I finished just a minute early. I really appreciate y'all sitting through this and learning some really cool information today. It is my honor to introduce Jonathan up next here, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about some of these really cool systems.
Excellent. Thank you, Justin. And hello, everyone. I'm Jonathan Welker, Senior Enterprise Solutions Analyst with Geographic Technologies Group. And I'm going to be discussing a little bit one of our business lines, Green City GIS, which is focused specifically on GIS services for Parks and Recreation Management. Now, Geographic Technologies Group, we're a full GIS consulting company focused specifically on GIS services and strategic planning for all departments of local government. And we are, of course, part of the Esri Partner Network. Advance my slide. This is one of my favorite slides, really, just because it shows a couple of things. Number one is the growth of Green City GIS across the country and up into Canada as well. It also offers kind of a look at the diversity. It's not listed here, but each one of these is either a town, a city, or a county, all of different sizes, ranging from 10 parks to 100+ parks. So this solution can really offer incredible results for all different sizes of organizations, and it's very a la carte as well, as we'll see, where different components can be selected depending on what the exact need is for your department or your organization or your community. And finally, it also shows just the diversity. Each one of these has a specific story to tell. Geographic Technologies Group, we love sitting down with your organization, your department, finding out exactly what initiatives you're focused on and the story you want to tell, and then representing and portraying that story as best as we possibly can. So what is Green City GIS? It's built entirely for and with Parks and Recreation departments to take advantage of the full Esri ecosystem. So like Nick was mentioning earlier and all of the presenters before me, it's important to have that system of record. Well, what goes into that system of record? There's a step not listed on here. I'm going to update this slide eventually, but that is going to be the database design. What do we have out there throughout our park system, and what do we want to know about those assets that are out there? So getting that database design nailed down is critical, and of course it can continue to evolve over time. Then we can start to move into more of the active steps. So getting into the mobile field data collection, as people have mentioned with field maps, getting into digitizing that to clean up that data, make it more beautiful. So it's a solid representation of what we have in the real world. And then getting into the fun part, or I guess my wheelhouse, which is deploying the software applications to be able to leverage all of that data that we built into our database and gone through and collected and continue to dynamically update. And there's a ton, it seems like it grows every day, of software applications available out there from Esri that really offer limitless potential depending on exactly what the use case is that you're interested in. Then as we get down to steps kind of 5 and 6, we can start to extend kind of the natural GIS capabilities, what we can get through the data collection with your park assets into some of those other business systems that you may have there at your organization. Now with Parks and Recreation, the most popular one that we see there is going to be your recreation management system. So geo-enabling all of those recreation users that was previously maybe held just in a database table somewhere, locating those on the map and being able to maybe prioritize our efforts, look for patterns, gaps, and opportunities to where we can better kind of outreach to our citizens, to our residents, to visitors, and promote our services better. And then, of course, the training and education and the support to maintain this throughout the lifespan of the applications and the solution. So I won't spend too much more time on the PowerPoint. I'm actually going to get, I think, into our first live demo, which is always fun. But I did just kind of want to step through what our process normally looks like. So as I mentioned, this is what a kind of park in asset inventory generally looks like. We're out there with mobile devices, with iPads, likely with bad elf devices as well. Sometimes we incorporate drones into this process as well if aerial photography, localized aerial photography is necessary. And then all of that gets fed into our software solutions. And as I mentioned, there's many out there. You can see a couple of them shown on the screen here, as well as listed up at the top. But this is really a la carte. We have some organizations that want us to just help them develop a story map on a specific initiative. And then we have others that really want the full suite of what Esri has to offer to really take it as far as we possibly can. And we'll take a look at just a couple of those in a minute. And then finally, of course, what this offers, with the data driving it all, is going to be management decision support analytics. So making more and better informed decisions based on the data that we have available, and also getting the tools in the right hands to be able to provide that analysis and to be able to prioritize where we're putting our capital and our budget, looking at social equity factors and dynamics, and bringing in demographic information as well. And so with that, we will shift over and take a look at our first live demo. So I'm going to show a lot of things. It's going to be a whirlwind. So hang on tight, and we'll go through this as efficiently as we can. Typically, when we deploy a Green City GIS solution, we deploy a ArcGIS hub site as well, really because there might be multiple solutions involved with that. And we need one central location to be able to compile all of that information so that staff don't have 5 bookmarks scattered across the top of their browser. Now, for organizations that already have an ArcGIS hub site, maybe an organizational ArcGIS hub site, we like to build a little space out for Parks and Recreation in there as well. And so you can see as I kind of scroll down this landing page, we have access to a variety of applications. Some of these are for internal use, as we can see here, such as your traditional kind of web mapping applications, your viewers to be able to view our assets. Some of these are more dashboard metric oriented for supervisors and monitoring different changes across our assets. And then some of these, of course, can be focused on that recreation component where we're doing those integrations with our existing business systems and seeing all of that in real time as well. And then as numerous other presenters have mentioned, there's a public component to this, specifically with Parks and Recreation. There's just a full gamut of tools, whether it be story maps or Survey 123 or dashboards, if you want to turn those around and make them public, that can be leveraged to get information out to your constituents, your community, and increasing some of that transparency about what is going on. So I'm going to go ahead and launch my first application here, which is going to be primarily an internal application that we see most of the time. And this is going to be our kind of general web mapping application, our viewer. So we can see our park system over on the right with kind of our polygons representing the different park boundaries. On the left, we can see all of that data that was initially built into our database. So anything from art features to benches to bicycle racks, of course, trees, and all of these are going to have different attribution tied to them. If we get down here, we get into our more kind of polygon areas with our mowing areas and our open space and our parking lots. And as I start to zoom in here to a specific park, we can start to see these features come to life. We can see our trees kind of populate the map here, a little amphitheater right on the lake. And of course, if I select on a tree, we're going to get attribution and information that is specific to this particular tree, along with the fields that we decided to capture about this particular type of asset. So we can see this is a maple tree with a DBH of 4. We can also extend this out into other web resources. So linking out to iTree tools to be able to enhance just kind of the natural benefit that you're able to get through a more kind of standard traditional GIS interface. As others have mentioned, we can also bring in photo attachments. You could have one, you could have multiple, maybe you need to have archived photos of how a certain asset has changed over time. And so that's kind of the general sense of, okay, we've gone out, we've collected this inventory, here it all is. And then of course, we want to make sure that we maintain that as we move forward so that it remains an accurate system of record. Also within here, we can do things like our info summary. A lot of times we go into organizations and they maybe either don't have any record at all of their assets, or it's stored in something like Excel. Our info summary widget here really just kind of helps tally all of this at the park system level if we're zoomed all the way out for how many of each feature we have. And then as I start to zoom into a particular location, this is going to adjust to show me what is within my map extent. So how many fences, how many benches, how many tables are within this particular location. And I won't get too into it because I think we are running short on time, but of course within here, we can query off of any attributes or fields that have been built into the database as well, provided that we have gone out and completed that full comprehensive asset evaluation, including things like condition and installation date and model. We can build either simple queries that contain one of those parameters or complex queries that kind of compound the various variables that may be within there. And then kind of one of the more exciting things, at least kind of recently, is getting into that 3D space. So now that we have our assets mapped in a 2D, we can actually start to now through the modern GIS technologies be able to expand this out into a 3D environment. So maybe we want to provide kind of a more interactive, engaging way to be able to view a park or tour a park and its various assets, what views may look like and what's out there before we actually get to that location. Through the models available just through our GIS Online, we can already start to do that with our trees, our light poles, our benches. And if you are one of those who is prone to doing modeling in other systems like Blender, those can also be brought in as well to enhance this visualization. Additionally, we can bring in things like buildings. Maybe you want to promote an event that might be happening downtown or in one of your parks, bringing in buildings, textures to be able to expand that even further, offering, again, kind of a tour of the environment in a 3D virtual environment before people actually get out there and experience it. So continuing to stick more on our asset side, this is a very basic kind of traditional asset dashboard. So this is going to be maybe what supervisors, managers use to monitor any kind of dynamic changes going on throughout assets that you might want to keep a check on or keep your finger on the pulse of. Now within here, I won't step through all of these, but we have things like mowing areas by acreage, where are staff spending the most time mowing. Over on the right, parking lots by number of spaces. So if we have a member of the public call in and say they want to hold an event somewhere and we need 100 parking spaces, well, we know we got 3 parking lots throughout our system that can accommodate that. And if I select one of these bars, it's going to take me directly to that parking lot, showing me the number of standard handicap spaces and of course any imagery or photographs that were taken at that time as well. Open space gauge, keeping track of open space across our park system, open space acres per park where we might have some room for development. And then down at the bottom, others have already mentioned it, so I won't touch on it much more at all, but getting that accurate tree inventory. We have trees by species along the bottom here. We could find our one apple tree. I normally do that in my demo, but for the sake of time, I'll pass over that for the time being. And I'll bring over my quote unquote mobile device. And I will ask you guys to keep an eye kind of on this threshold gauge over on the far left in my dashboard. So this is going to be a threshold gauge showing us playground equipment in fair condition, meaning it's trending towards poor. So I'm going to kind of from my office navigate to this particular piece of playground equipment as if I'm out in the field. We'll say over time this swing set has started trending, from a previous good condition down to fair condition. It's kind of decreased in quality over time. We could also adjust our materials, our dates. We could add any photos while we would like to, if we would like to, while we're in here as well. But I'll go ahead and change this to fair, hit submit. And then dynamically in real time, what we should see just behind here on the dashboard is going to be that threshold gauge update to hit our 20 kind of maximum, showing us that red indicator that we need to go out there and kind of remedy some of that. So I'm going to shift over quickly now. That was kind of the asset side of things and just show the recreation side. We have all of our assets. Let's take a look at what we're pulling from our recreation database. So how many memberships do we have? Active, waitlist, tentative, bringing in weather warnings if we would like to that may be impacting our events. Also live traffic, where are there accidents that may be impacting certain individuals' ability to get to an event that we might be hosting. And then we can get into the analytical part of looking at our recreation data. So where are individuals coming from signing up for our activities from? So up at the top, we have a couple of different kind of selectors. If we want to see what the people from neighboring Bloomington are coming into our city and signing up for, this is going to help us identify how we can better market our services, where there are potential gaps, where we need to market services better, and so on. And you can see the various other kind of indicators along here showing us what are our top activities along the bottom, our male or female, being able to kind of filter among those as well in our activity types. One last thing kind of on the recreation side here, I do want to promote our GIS Insights. It's a very powerful tool that kind of extends dashboard into a more active dashboarding environment where you have this worksheet to work with. So I have kind of a standard template set up here looking at that same recreation data. But then down below, we have all of this gray space that gives us a very active analytical environment to be able to pull things down, filter things out, create new heat maps based on certain criteria. So just within here, I'll show kind of maybe one example. If I wanted to look at my senior population, all of this is going to be dynamic, adjusting my heat map, showing me where the senior population is coming from. Also, again, kind of what they're signing up for from an activity tree map standpoint and our overall centers as well. One final thing that I did want to show, and I think this is probably my favorite that I've done recently. We had a client that was very interested in looking at social equity and being able to prioritize parks, and they had a model that they were working from where they were weighting certain criteria. So this model was looking at things like household income below poverty level, child population, the diversity index, also the park adjacency, how many parks are clustered within this particular area. Using our GIS business analysts, we were able to basically create that model for them to be able to run and prioritize their parks. So we can see a final score kind of listed in this second column for each one of their parks, with the rank 1 being the one that has the highest child population and the lowest median household income and the least amount of parks next to it. And then once we have this data, we can slice and dice this in any way that we'd like, whether it be looking at specific service areas or particular parks. And we can expand this out further, breaking the overall kind of park equity criteria that we were looking at into subcomponents, also looking at our walk times. So if I select a certain park here, we can see, within a 5-minute walk time, these are the demographics that we're going to be serving immediately. We can also look at 5, 10, 15. That's going to be what these different kind of radiuses coming out from Boone Pond Park here indicate, and then kind of how the demographics break down in a 5-minute column on our left, a 10-minute in the middle, and a 15 on the right. And I think I'm just about out of time. They decided to turn this around and put this park planning and equity prioritization dashboard out to the public in a story map. So linking back to the parks master plan about why they're engaging in this initiative, a YouTube video to show this process as well, what goes into prioritizing a park for the city, and kind of what the process looked like for doing that, going into the initiation, connecting with the public, again, showing YouTube videos from the Parkapalooza event. And then finally, showing the criteria that was considered and weighted for that park prioritization, and then including that dashboard as a public transparency piece down at the very bottom. And I believe that probably concludes my time. So I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to me speak. Again, I'm with Geographic Technologies Group. Please, if you would like to know more, visit us at greencitygis.com. Thank you.
All right. Hey, good afternoon. Let me get my screen share set up. My name is Gordon White, and just imagine what he was just sharing there. He was talking about all kinds of things with parks, and imagine that we could see, let's say he talked about mowing. Imagine we could actually see the mowers when they were mowing on that map. And that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we do at Samsara. So we'll talk about how Samsara integrates with GIS solutions to transform service delivery in the public sector. So for those of you responsible for parks and public spaces, we understand the breadth of services that you provide to operate these spaces. We're particularly proud of our work to transform asset management and help governments operate smarter. So our mission here, we're dedicated to providing cutting edge solutions for public sector organizations. So our connected operations cloud helps public sector organizations manage their equipment and provide their constituents with the highest level of service. So by integrating GIS with our solutions, we offer a comprehensive view of vehicles, generators, porta potties, mowers, snow blowers, and more, enabling better decision-making and enhanced operational efficiency. So Nick, very early on, talked about GIS as the digital system of record. And we like to think about Samsara as the system of record for your physical operations. So if we talk about the integration here with, between Samsara and a GIS solution like Esri, think about it this way. Samsara is very good at tracking assets that move and what they're doing while those assets are moving. So in addition to just tracking location, our solution will track asset conditions, maintenance history, utilization, and all for an eye on optimizing resource allocation. So integrating Samsara into a GIS platform is going to allow a public works department to gain a holistic view of their infrastructure. This blends GIS map layers with real-time information on mobile assets. So another thing to think about is this can help locate equipment, ensure the equipment is utilized effectively, and even recover stolen assets, thereby saving taxpayer money. Visualizing the data helps identifying areas for improvement by spotting trends and problem areas. Efficient resource allocation, directing resources where they're needed the most. So for people that are responsible for managing these public spaces, one of the most common calls from citizens are whether or not service was provided. So Justin showed a picture of park rangers in front of their truck, and the integration of these GIS map layers in Samsara can help understand where those park rangers are, where they've been, and who's the most appropriate person to dispatch to a service request. If we take a look at one of our customers, the city of Memphis. The city of Memphis covers about 325,000 square miles and serves about 850,000 citizens. So they use our Connected Operations Cloud to gain real-time visibility across 17 departments. So not just Parks and Rec, but I think emergency response and solid waste and other departments. But one of our solutions is around vehicle telematics. Understanding and having full visibility into vehicle locations and service issues using real-time GPS. This also helps streamline things like routing. So if you have a set of responsibilities and tasks to take care of across a park or public space, Samsara can help you with planning those routes to accelerate that service delivery. And then also asset tracking. City of Memphis pointed out here on this slide, they used our solution to recover some stolen lawnmowers, totaling up to about $40,000. One of my favorite stories is another customer that will mow. They'll mow along highways, and they'll leave those mowers out over the weekend, and they kept coming back and finding the mowers were in place, but they were always out of gas. And after deploying our solution, they found that local farmers would borrow those tractors and go mow and then return them back to where they found them, just a little shy on gas. And another example is several of our public sector customers track not just mowing, but snow operations. So integrating with PTO and material spreaders, pulling all of that data into a GIS solution, operators can see precisely where operations are taking place. And just to give you a quick example, and not a real life demo, but this is the city of Kalamazoo. This is an example back in January of where their snowplows actually ran through a neighborhood. And we can see with this, with the color coding here, how recently a snowplow went down a particular street. And then we have several reports on how much material was spread in the deployment of that service, and things like salt to melt the ice. So finally, I know this was real quick, but just a couple of takeaways. If you really think about Samsara and what we do, we're very good at keeping up with things that move and what they're doing while they move. So not just vehicles, but tractors and street sweepers, and moving into smaller and unpowered assets as well. So we'll give you a view of all of those assets to help you understand how and when they're used. And then with a very, very simple and painless integration to something like our partners Esri, it's very easy to integrate those all of those maps that we just saw to understand how well those services are provided, where are those services provided, in order to be able to better respond to citizens. So all of that being said, I'd like to invite all of our speakers back for a quick round of Q&A from our participants.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, Gordon, everybody. Great presentations. That's always insightful to see the real world application of GIS as it applies to Parks and Recreation. Apologize to the group. We're going a little bit late, but there are a handful of questions I think we can probably knock out pretty quick. Anything we don't get in the webinar session, the panelists will definitely follow up with you individually to get you those answers as needed. So appreciate everybody sticking around just for a few more minutes. We're running a little bit late, but let's try to get into some of these questions. Just real quickly, this one was interesting here. I kind of thought about this one. I'll start with it. Which information or parameters about trees are you storing apart from the GPS coordinates? How easy is it for your platforms to add more data about the tree assets for botanists? Botanists, sorry. Any plan to use RFID to store and track data about trees? I think this is talking about attribution of trees during the collection phase. So I'll open it up. There's, I think, 2 or 3 different questions in there. That's why I started with that one. Maybe we can knock out a handful of those. So any of the panelists want to take 1 or 2 of those on and answer it for our attendee here today?
Sure, I can at least start. For the RFID portion, you're absolutely correct. There are solutions out there. Survey 123 from the Esri ecosystem allows integration with RFID readers. We actually see that quite a bit these days. Similarly with QR codes, since COVID, we've seen a reemergence of the use of QR codes all over the place. Custom tagging for trees, we still see that. In terms of other types of attributes, I know a couple of the presenters mentioned it, or at least briefly, but I think most certified arborists or at least tree assessment individuals would be following, say, ISA standards, the International Society of Arborists. So things like, obviously, the species or type, or the name of the type of tree. There's something called diameter at breast height. This is the basically circumference of the tree about at the height of a human. You would look at things like condition. Is it healthy or not healthy? Is it alive? You could look at height. So how tall is the tree? We also are very interested in canopy. So if you're looking at drip lines and canopy coverages, that would be another thing. There's quite a bit of other things that could be also recorded. The neat thing with GIS is you can custom create those fields. And you can really collect whatever you want. It's sort of like the field of dreams. If you will build it, they will come. You can create the GIS and collect whatever you would like. And I just recommend this at a minimum: the species, the diameter at breast height, and the health. With those 3 critical factors, you can run like the USDI iTree analysis, and you can start to get a ton of biometric results like stormwater runoff and calculations of carbon sequestration. So at least I started it, James. Somebody else can take it from there.
Yeah, Nick, thanks. Good stuff. In my experience, it's always to get more than less when you're in the field collecting the data. You never want to go back to the same location. The oops factor of, oh, I wish I knew this about those trees, and then have to go back and recollect. Any other gentlemen want to chime in on that one?
I can chime in a little bit on that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different data points that you can collect regarding trees. I think Nick really kind of hit the basics. A lot of that stuff can be somewhat subjective, as I was mentioning in my presentation. So, it does require a little bit of training and some background knowledge. It all depends on how in depth you want to go. And I think at the end of the day, it all really boils down to is what is your outcomes? What actionable results do you want to have happen? And that can really guide the type of input that you're putting in there. And like Nick mentioned, all these systems are very customizable. Every project I do is pretty much custom for that specific project.
Great.
Yeah, John, real quick, I know we're running along, so it's already folly at this point. So if people are sticking around, I'm assuming you're here because you want to be. But I remember I worked with Justin on a project with the Urban Tree Council in Phoenix, and we actually were like recording ambient temperatures and things. So, you know, little devices to collect temperature. If you're looking at extreme heat events and urban heat island and how it affects, you know, your flora and fauna, you can attach that to a GPS. We look at wind, so you know, collecting some. So there's ambient things to collect at the park that associate with the tree, but may not be totally about the tree.
Yeah, directly linking to weather stations in GIS to get that live data feed is always a critical thing too. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Real quick here, this one was interesting. Any technology that you know of to measure local park usage? So I assume like foot traffic, people that are engaging in the park network. Anybody have any experience with, you know, identifying who's coming to the parks, visiting for how long, and, you know, that type of thing? Interesting concept.
Yeah, so I can tell you there's a number of different companies out there where you can currently purchase cell phone tracking data. What it does, it breaks it down by demographics. You don't get any personal information. What it allows you to do is you can track that data within your park system or within a certain area. You can buy a certain amount of time. I can tell you for that Gilbert Parks and Recreation Master Plan we just completed, I think we purchased data all the way back to 2016 for those projects, just to see what was happening as we built new facilities, what types of facilities, and we can get down to the point to where we were putting additional cell towers, temporary cell towers within like large public events that we already have. So like they have a 4th of July event on an annual basis that has a couple thousand people there. So they need to boost the signal anyways. And it actually allowed us to triangulate to find out where we had a higher density of people and track those kinds of things. It sounds a little big brothery, but it doesn't allow you any personal information. So all it is, it's literally just showing you what type of things happen. The cool things you can also get out of it is if we have a park, there's a couple of parks in particular we're tracking to try to figure out what is the economic impact of those parks being within those places. We can track and see if people are going to the restaurants next door or the businesses next door, and what is the frequency of visits to those as well. So there's really cool information out there that you can collect these days. I'm not going to broadcast to anybody. You can look it up though. There's 3 bigger companies that are out there. I don't know if anybody has a really good experience with any of them. I'm not going to say my experience has been bad. It's just fairly new to me. So but it was really informative, very, very informative.
Yeah, true geospatial intelligence, you know, that's really taking a deep dive into that stuff. So yeah, thanks, Justin. Just a little bit time left for a couple more. I don't want to, I know everybody's time is valuable. We're chipping away at that. So it was mentioned that recreation management software is being consumed in GIS. And I think the question is, any experience in some of those vendors, maybe some vendor names on what looks like Jonathan presented on integrating with recreation management solutions.
Yep. Yeah. And just for the record, we do that integration really across multiple business systems. It doesn't have to be just Parks and Recreation, but in speaking specifically on Parks and Recreation, I would say, and James, back me up here since you are my direct colleague, we have not run into a system yet that we really haven't been able to integrate with. But some of the ones that are coming to mind recently would be ActiveNet, Max Galaxy, the Civic Rec as well.
VSI, Vermont Systems.
Yeah. Yep.
Book King is another one. So it's a database, right? Database can be geo-enabled, geo-coded. Yeah. Okay, great, thanks. And then we'll end with this one. This one was interesting on the urban design side. Do you with cases know of any urban design that were done without taking into consideration the parks and recreation areas? Is there a tool to do re-engineering design and indicate number and locations of new parks / recreation to meet the standards for healthy environment? Pretty interesting question there. And I'll open it up. Anybody want to take it?
It's probably a Justin question. I think he's, as an urban designer, he's going to be the guy to talk about this.
I think that's when it came in, was during Justin's talk. Yeah.
I will make one comment before letting him answer. There is an Esri software called Arc Urban. It's definitely on the top echelon of the complexity chart, but you can do some really crazy city modeling. And then Justin, take it away.
Yeah, so that's a great question because I got to talk all about that part of urban design. Really, it's still a pretty new thing with all things considered. And then if you were in the western half of the United States, there was a lot of the Wild West out there going on, which just things got built everywhere. And they got built a little haphazardly. So one of the communities we work with, or types of communities we work with quite a bit, are actually old mining towns across the Southwest region, which were just, they got thrown up in a day, essentially. So it wasn't even something that was built over a series of decades. A lot of these towns were literally built within a 10-year time frame, and they really have not changed a lot since then, besides maybe some minor additions to the footprints of the town, because they tend to be pretty constrained by whatever regional constraints they have in those areas. Typically it's mountains or rivers or something funky and fun. I can tell you a lot of these cities, though, like you have a lot of opportunities, typically in places that have not had a strong sense of urban design. You tend to find a lot more of what we call our patchwork quilt or a checkerboard system happening, where we tend to have a lot more of these open spaces that are undeveloped. Those tend to be our biggest assets. There's also other ways we look at it. Oftentimes when we're working in areas that did not have any urban design done, because it really became just the ultimate standard by the time we got to the 1980s. There isn't a whole lot done without a certain level of planning being done to it. We tend to find some dilapidated structures. I can tell you we're working with one town right now where we're actually going to be removing 2 houses in a row, and it's become a new neighborhood park. Because the house has been abandoned since the late 90s. They're mostly dilapidated. And it's a need in the community. They don't have any access within like a 2-mile radius, essentially, of this area, and it's on a steep hillside. So the one that you can get to, it takes 2 miles to walk to it, even though it's only like a quarter mile away or half mile away. So it's trying to figure out how we create that equity within the system is a little challenging, so don't feel like that's something that is going to be like, oh, we can never fix this because we didn't have good urban design. One of my favorite examples to allude back to within the US at least is looking at Atlanta. It's a fairly harebrained city when you look at it from an urban planning standpoint, but they've done an excellent job with creating a well-balanced parks and recreation system over the past 60 plus years at this point. And it was a concerted effort. That's a big city versus small city I was just talking about, which is a town of like a couple thousand versus a city with a couple million. But it's doable at all scales. It 100% is.
You bet. I think the rest of the panelists would concur, right? So as we wrap up today, apologize for not getting to all the questions. There were some late ones that came in, but we'll do our best to follow up with each of you on those to engage with you as attendees. So thank you for your participation, questions, and listening into all the different panelists. In the chat, you'll have everybody that spoke today, well, at least their name and company that they work for. Feel free to engage with them. I think I can speak for everybody on today's webinar that they would love to speak with you more about, we condensed a lot into an hour and 45 minutes. So there's a lot that we can talk about specifically in your organization, and I think each of the panelists would be happy to do so. So with that, thanks again. Also, please be on the lookout for the asset webinar series ongoing. Lots of different topics on GIS and geospatial technology throughout the year on various topics as it applies to organizations throughout the globe. So feel free to engage on those and register for those. And with that, on behalf of the panelists, thank you for attending, and be on the lookout for that recording. Hopefully you'll get a quick link on that to download it and keep it for your records. So with that, thanks everybody. Gentlemen, enjoyed seeing you all again. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon and get out and do some GIS. You'll really love it when you actually engage with the software and the technology. So with that, thank you everybody.